What if I told you that the foundation for an unbreakable day, for an iron mind, is not built on grand gestures, but on a single, silent decision made in the dark? What if the most important battle you will fight today is lost or won in the first 10 seconds after you open your eyes? Most people begin their day in defeat. The alarm rings, a shrill invasion of their peace, and their first conscious act is one of negotiation, of retreat. They hit the snooze button. It seems harmless, a small compromise. 5 more minutes, 9 more minutes. But it is not harmless. It is a declaration of intent. It is the first training rep of the day, and you have just trained your mind to prioritize comfort over commitment, to delay duty in favor of drowsiness. You have started your day by breaking a promise to yourself. This single act sends a ripple through your entire being. Your word is not your bond. Your resolve is weak, and the chaos of the world has already won its first victory before your feet have even touched the floor. I remember my days in the tech world. The pressure was immense, a relentless storm of deadlines, market fluctuations, and competitor aggression. My mornings began with a jolt of pure cortisol. The alarm felt like an enemy combatant. I'd hit snooze 3, 4, maybe 5 times, each time telling myself I was gathering strength. What a lie. I was gathering anxiety. I was marinating in the dread of the day ahead. By the time I finally dragged myself out of bed, I wasn't rested, I was already behind, already reacting, already on the defensive. My mind was a chaotic battlefield because I had surrendered the first hill without a fight. It was only when I began to study the Stoics, men who commanded armies and empires, that I understood. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, had to argue with himself to get out of bed. He wrote in his private journal, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I have to go to work, as a human being. What do I have to complain of, if I'm going to do what I was born for?'" He didn't rely on motivation. He relied on discipline. He reminded himself of his duty. Here is the practical application, the first step in forging your iron mind. The moment your alarm sounds, your feet hit the floor. No debate, no hesitation. It is a non-negotiable contract you make with yourself. The action is the answer. This is not about waking up early for the sake of it. It is about proving to yourself, with your very first action, that you are in command. A young man I mentor, a brilliant programmer drowning in the stress of his startup, told me this one change transformed his life. He called it the 10-second victory. He said that by simply getting up immediately, he felt he had already accomplished the hardest task of the day. He walked into the office not as a man catching up, but as a man who had already established his authority over his own impulses. He had won the first battle, and it gave him the momentum to face the others. This is your first practice. This is the bedrock. Everything else we will discuss is built upon this single, decisive action. So I ask you, when your alarm sounds tomorrow, who will be in command? Will it be the part of you that craves fleeting comfort, or the part that is forging an unbreakable will? The fortress of silence. Resisting the digital invasion. Now that you are on your feet, having won that first critical battle, the second enemy immediately presents itself. It glows in the dark. It promises connection, information, and urgency. It is your phone. The instinct, conditioned by years of habit, is to grab it, to check emails, to scroll through news feeds, to see what catastrophes, obligations, and opinions the world has decided to force upon you while you slept. To do this is to commit a strategic blunder of the highest order. It is akin to a general inviting enemy spies into his war room before he has even reviewed his own strategy. You are willingly surrendering the most valuable territory you possess, your morning mind, to the chaos, anxieties, and agendas of others. You are allowing the noise of the world to set your mental and emotional frequency for the day before you have had a chance to tune it yourself. The man who checks his phone first thing in the morning is not the master of his day, he is a slave to his inbox. For years, this was my ritual. The glow of the screen was the first light I saw. An email about a server crash, a news headline about a market downturn, a passive-aggressive message from a competitor. This was the nutrition I fed my mind. I would be furious, anxious, or panicked before my first cup of coffee. I was a puppet, and the world was pulling my strings. My reactions were dictated by a cascade of digital alerts. I brought this anxious, reactive energy into my meetings, my conversations with my team, and my home life. It was a poison I willingly drank every single morning. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught a core principle. Some things are within our power, and some things are not. The thoughts, opinions, and emergencies of other people are not within your power. Your reaction to them, and more importantly, when you choose to engage with them, is. The morning is your time to fortify what is yours, your reasoned choice, your principles, your peace of mind. The practical application is as simple as it is difficult. For the first hour of your day, there is to be no technology. No phone, no computer, no television. Your home must become a fortress of silence. This is not about deprivation, it is about strategic fortification. This hour is sacred. It is your time to build your inner citadel. A woman I mentor, a high-powered attorney, found this to be the most challenging habit to adopt. She felt an almost physical pull to her phone, terrified she would miss an urgent client email. I asked her, in all your years of practice, has there ever been an email sent at 6 a.m. that could not have waited until 7 a.m.? She admitted there had not. After a week of practicing the sacred hour, she reported a profound shift. She said she felt like she was walking into the office with a shield. The frantic energy of her colleagues no longer penetrated her calm. She was responding to the day's challenges from a position of centered strength, not panicked reaction. She was setting the terms of engagement. This is your objective, to create a space for your own thoughts to form before they are contaminated by the thoughts of others. You must be the curator of your own mind. I ask you to consider this. Is your mind a fortress built by you each morning, or is it an open field where any random event or opinion can wander in and set up camp? What could you build in that first hour of silence if you claimed it as your own? The view from above. Rehearsing for reality. You have won the battle against the snooze button. You have defended your mind from the digital invasion. Now, in the fortress of silence you have created, it is time to train for the day's battles. Most people drift into their day hoping for the best, armed with little more than blind optimism. This is not a strategy, it is a gamble. The Stoic, the mental warrior, does not hope for a smooth day. He prepares for a difficult one. He practices what is known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is not pessimism. It is a powerful form of strategic visualization. It is about rehearsing for reality. You sit in the quiet and you calmly, deliberately, walk through the challenges your day is likely to present. The difficult conversation with a colleague, the frustrating traffic, the unexpected technical failure, the client who might reject your proposal. You don't wallow in the anxiety of these possibilities, you simply look at them. You see them clearly, and you rehearse your response. I used to be a master of avoidance. If I knew a tough meeting was coming, I'd push it from my mind, distracting myself with busy work until the last possible second. The result was that I walked into these situations completely unprepared, emotionally and strategically. My anxiety would be sky high, and I would react with anger or defensiveness. I was a fighter entering the ring having never studied his opponent. When I discovered the writings of Seneca, this all changed. He wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." It was a revelation. The point wasn't to manifest negativity, but to strip it of its power to surprise you. So I began my day by sitting for 10 minutes and imagining the things that could go wrong. The server farm could go down. A key investor could pull out. A star employee could quit. And for each scenario, I would calmly ask, what is the virtuous response? How can I meet this with logic, with courage, with justice? Here is the practical exercise. It is called rehearsing the day. Take 5 to 10 minutes. Sit down with a journal, or just with your own thoughts. Identify the 3 most likely points of friction in your day ahead. Now for each one, visualize it happening. See it in detail. Feel the initial emotional sting of it. And then, deliberately, rehearse your ideal response. Not the angry, fearful, reactive response, but the calm, logical, and virtuous one. How would the best version of yourself handle this? How would you act if you were guided by reason and not by emotion? You are creating mental and emotional muscle memory. You are turning potential ambushes into planned encounters where you have already chosen the high ground. When I taught this to a young sales executive who suffered from crippling anxiety before big presentations, it changed his career. He would visualize the toughest questions, the most skeptical faces in the room, the projector failing. By the time he walked into the actual presentation, he said it felt like he had already been there. He was no longer afraid of the unexpected because he had already met it in his mind. The goal of this practice is not to create a perfect, frictionless day. That is a fantasy. The goal is to ensure that no matter what friction arises, it cannot break you. You have already prepared for it. Ask yourself, are you walking into your day hoping for the best, or are you preparing to handle the worst? What potential surprise can you disarm today simply by looking it in the eye this morning? Forging the day's armor. Setting virtuous intentions. Having rehearsed for the day's challenges, the next step is to forge your armor. This is not a to-do list. A to-do list is merely a collection of tasks, of external objectives. It is fragile. A single unexpected event, a canceled meeting, a sudden crisis, can shatter your list and leave you feeling like a failure. The mental warrior operates from a higher strategic level. You do not set intentions for what you will do. You set intentions for who you will be. You define the principles that will guide your actions, regardless of the circumstances. This is the difference between having a map with a single route and having a compass. The map is useless if the road is blocked. The compass allows you to navigate any terrain. The Stoic compass is comprised of the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. This is your armor. In my years as an entrepreneur, my days were governed by my calendar and my task list. Success was defined by checkmarks. Get funding, ship product, beat competitor. It was a relentless and shallow pursuit. If I accomplished my tasks, I felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction. If I was blocked, I felt a deep, personal sense of failure and rage. My internal state was entirely dependent on external outcomes, most of which were not fully in my control. I was strong when things went my way, and brittle when they did not. Marcus Aurelius provided the antidote. He constantly reminded himself to act with a will to justice, to temperance, to courage, to freedom. He wasn't focused on a specific outcome, but on the character of his actions. He knew that the outcome was often up to fate, but his response, his virtue, was always his own. The practical application is to define your guiding principle for the day. Before you even think about your schedule, you take a moment and you set a virtue intention. Perhaps today is a day filled with difficult negotiations. Your intention is not to win the negotiation. It is to act with justice and wisdom, ensuring you are fair to others while being strategically sound. Perhaps you are facing a task you have been dreading. Your intention is not to finish the task. It is to approach this with courage, to face the discomfort head-on. Maybe you feel overwhelmed and scattered. Your intention is to act with temperance, to focus on one thing at a time with deliberate calm. Write it down. 1 sentence. Today, my guiding principle will be. This becomes the filter through which you view every event and every decision. A mentee of mine, a manager struggling with a toxic team member, used this to great effect. His old goal was get this person to cooperate. It always ended in frustration. His new virtue-based intention became, in every interaction today, I will act with temperance and justice. This shifted his entire approach. He was no longer trying to control the other person's behavior. He was focused only on mastering his own. The dynamic changed almost immediately. This practice detaches your sense of success from external validation. Did you act with courage? Did you act with fairness? If the answer is yes, the day is a success. Even if the project failed or the deal fell through, you have made your inner state invincible to the whims of fortune. Reflect on this. Are you building your day around a fragile list of things to do, or are you armoring yourself with a resilient code of how to be? What is the one virtue that, if you embodied it today, would change everything? The physical anchor. Discipline in motion. The mind and the body are not separate entities. They are a single, integrated system. You cannot forge an iron mind while ignoring the vessel that houses it. A mind that is clouded by lethargy or agitated by stress will struggle to maintain its discipline. Therefore, the next stage of the morning ritual is to anchor your mental work in the physical realm. Notice, I did not say a brutal workout. The modern obsession with high-intensity, punishing exercise often misses the point. It can become just another form of frantic external striving. The goal here is not to exhaust the body, but to connect with it. It is about deliberate, disciplined movement. It is a physical manifestation of the order you are cultivating in your mind. This is about reminding yourself that you are not just a floating consciousness, but an embodied being, and that your command extends to your physical form. There was a period during my worst burnout when my body was a complete afterthought. I fueled it with caffeine and sugar, ignored the tension that knotted my shoulders, and saw sleep as a necessary evil. I treated my body like a piece of hardware that I expected to run flawlessly without any maintenance. And, predictably, it began to fail. I suffered from migraines, digestive issues, and a constant humming anxiety that lived in my chest. I thought these were mental problems, the price of ambition. I was wrong. They were symptoms of a profound disconnection. Seneca famously said, we should take wandering outdoor walks so that the mind might be nourished and refreshed by the open air and deep breathing. The Stoics understood that physical well-being was a component of, not a distraction from, the philosophical life. It is hard to think clearly when your body is in a state of rebellion. The practical application is to engage in some form of deliberate movement every morning. This could be a brisk walk, without headphones, simply observing the world around you. It could be a simple stretching routine, focusing on your breath and the sensations in your body. It could be 10 minutes of bodyweight exercises, push-ups, squats, performed with perfect form and full attention. The key is deliberation. You are not just going through the motions. You are paying attention. You are feeling the connection between your intention and the physical action. I have a mentee, a writer who was stuck in a creative block for months. He spent his mornings staring at a blank screen, his mind racing with anxiety. I told him to stop writing in the morning and start walking. For 30 minutes, every single day. No phone, no podcasts, just walking and breathing. Within 2 weeks, his block was gone. He said the rhythm of walking quieted the frantic noise in his head, allowing new ideas to surface. He anchored his scattered mind in the simple, steady discipline of putting one foot in front of the other. This is not about fitness goals. It is about presence. It is about using the body as a tool to calm and focus the mind. It is a physical declaration. I am here. I am present. I am in control of this vessel. So I ask you, how are you treating the physical vessel that carries your mind? Are you starting your day with a discipline that integrates body and mind? Or are you allowing them to remain disconnected adversaries? The wisdom of sages. Engaging the great minds. You have prepared your mind and body. Now, it is time to nourish your intellect and your character. The mental warrior does not assume he has all the answers. He seeks counsel from the wisest minds in history. He understands that his personal struggles are not unique. The questions of meaning, frustration, fear, and duty have been wrestled with by the greatest thinkers for thousands of years. To neglect their wisdom is the height of arrogance. It is like trying to navigate a treacherous sea without a map or a compass when the charts have already been drawn by those who sailed before you. The morning, in its quiet and solitude, is the perfect time to engage in a dialogue with these sages. This is not about passively consuming information. It is about actively engaging with ideas that challenge, fortify, and elevate you. In the depths of my burnout, my reading consisted of business books, market reports, and tech journals. I was cramming my head full of data, but I was starving my soul of wisdom. My perspective was a mile wide and an inch deep. I knew how to build a company, but I had no idea how to build a life. It was a terrifying emptiness. When I finally hit rock bottom, a friend gave me a copy of Epictetus's Discourses. I started reading it not as a philosophical text, but as a survival manual. And it was. The words were written nearly 2,000 years ago, but they spoke directly to my modern anxieties. It's not things that upset us, but our judgment about things. This simple idea hit me with the force of a physical blow. I realized I had been spending my life trying to control things, the market, my employees, my reputation, when the only thing I could truly control was my own mind. This daily engagement with Stoic thought wasn't an escape from my problems. It was a direct confrontation with them, armed with better tools. The practice is simple. Read something of substance for 15 minutes. Not the news, not social media, not a light novel. Read from the masters, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, the letters of Seneca, the essays of Montaigne, or any text that deals with the timeless questions of character and purpose. And you do not just read. You engage. Keep a journal beside you. Write down a quote that strikes you. Ask yourself how it applies to your life, to the challenges you visualized earlier. This practice is twofold. First, it fills your mind with powerful, ordering thoughts. Second, it is an act of humility. It reminds you that you are part of a long, unbroken chain of human beings striving to live honorably and wisely. I advised a young leader, overwhelmed by the feeling that he had to invent solutions to all his team's problems, to start this practice. He began reading biographies of great historical figures. He told me it was liberating. He saw that the giants of history faced the same doubts and setbacks he did. It took the pressure off. He wasn't inventing, he was learning, applying timeless principles of leadership to his own situation. Reading in this way is not a luxury. It is a fundamental component of mental training. It is how you upgrade the operating system of your mind. Ask yourself this: who are your counselors? Are you feeding your mind with the fleeting anxieties of the daily news cycle, or with the timeless wisdom of the ages? The dichotomy of control. Contract, drawing the line. We have built a routine that cultivates discipline, focus, and wisdom. Now we come to the intellectual core of the Stoic operating system, a principle so powerful that, if fully integrated, can render your inner peace indestructible. It is the dichotomy of control. Epictetus stated it with stark clarity. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Within our control are our judgments, our intentions, our desires, our aversions. In short, our own actions and the workings of our own mind. Outside of our control is everything else: our health, our wealth, our reputation, the actions of others, the weather, the economy. The vast majority of human anxiety, anger, and frustration comes from a fundamental confusion between these two categories. We exhaust ourselves trying to command what we cannot, while neglecting the one domain where we have absolute sovereignty, our own inner world. The morning ritual is the perfect time to make a conscious, daily contract with yourself to respect this fundamental boundary. This was the source of my undoing. In my career, I believed my success was a direct result of my ability to impose my will on the world. I conflated influence with control. I thought I could control project outcomes, control my employees' performance, control how the market perceived my company. So, when a project failed, I saw it as a personal failure of control, which led to rage. When an employee underperformed, I felt personally betrayed. When a competitor wrote a negative article, I was consumed by a desire to control my reputation. I was a man at war with reality itself, and I was losing badly. The Stoic teaching on the dichotomy of control was not an excuse for passivity. It was the ultimate strategy for effectiveness. It taught me to pour every ounce of my energy into what I could control. My effort, my strategy, my integrity, my response to setbacks, and to accept the outcomes, whatever they might be, with equanimity. It was like putting down a 100-pound weight I didn't even know I was carrying. Here is the practical mental exercise: your morning contract. After your reading, take just 2 minutes. Close your eyes. First, visualize the day ahead and explicitly name what is not in your control. The traffic on the way to work is not in my control. My client's final decision is not in my control. My colleague's mood is not in my control. Acknowledge this without judgment. Release your grip on it. Then visualize the same situations and name what is in your control. My choice to leave on time is in my control. The quality of the proposal I present is in my control. My choice to be patient and professional with my colleague is in my control. This simple 2-minute act redraws the battle lines of your day. It focuses your formidable energy away from unwinnable fights and directs it squarely toward the territory you can and must command. A mentee struggling with a volatile stock portfolio found immense peace in this. Every morning, he would say, "The movement of the market is not in my control. My research, my strategy, and my decision not to panic sell are in my control." He stopped tying his emotional state to the random fluctuations of the market. He became an investor, not a gambler. This is the source of tranquility. It is not found in a perfect life where everything goes your way, but in the wisdom to know the difference between what you can change and what you must accept. I ask you to look at the source of your current anxieties. How many of them stem from a desire to control something that is ultimately outside of your power? What would happen if you signed a contract with yourself, just for today, to focus only on what is yours to command? The gratitude for obstacles. The final reframe. We arrive at the final and perhaps most transformative stage of the morning discipline. We have built a routine of action, silence, preparation, intention, and wisdom. The final piece is a radical shift in perspective. Most people practice gratitude for the good things in their life, their health, their family, their successes. This is a fine and worthy practice. But the mental warrior goes a step further. He cultivates gratitude not just for his blessings but for his obstacles. He understands that a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. He knows that character is not forged in comfort, but in the crucible of adversity. The challenges, the frustrations, the very things you were visualizing in the premeditatio malorum, are not impediments to your life, they are the path. They are the raw material from which you forge virtue. This is the ultimate reframe. The obstacle is the way. For most of my life, I saw obstacles as problems to be solved, annoyances to be endured, or injustices to be railed against. A difficult employee was a problem. A market downturn was an injustice. A personal failure was a tragedy. Each one was a source of immense suffering because I saw it as something that should not be happening. My life was a constant argument with reality. The great Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, provided the key to unlock this mental prison. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. He realized that every obstacle presents a unique opportunity to practice a virtue. A rude person is an opportunity to practice patience. A betrayal is an opportunity to practice forgiveness. A failure is an opportunity to practice resilience. The obstacle itself becomes the fuel for your growth. It is no longer an enemy to be vanquished, but a training partner to be welcomed. Here is the closing practice of your morning routine. After you have reviewed your day, after you have set your intentions, take one final minute. Think about the most significant challenge you expect to face today, the one you are dreading most. And then say to yourself, either out loud or in your mind, "Thank you. Thank this obstacle for the specific virtue it is giving you the chance to cultivate. Thank you for this difficult conversation. It is an opportunity to practice courage and justice. Thank you for this tedious, frustrating task. It is an opportunity to practice diligence and patience. Thank you for this uncertainty. It is an opportunity to practice trust in my own resilience." This is not a denial of the difficulty. It is an acceptance and a transformation of it. It is the final act of taking complete ownership of your internal state. When I began this, it felt absurd, but over time, it rewired my brain. I stopped seeing my life as a series of problems and started seeing it as a curriculum designed for my own strengthening. This is the pinnacle of the warrior's mindset. To not just endure hardship, but to use it. To not just survive the fire, but to be forged by it. This is how you build a mind that is not just resilient, but anti-fragile. A mind that doesn't just resist shocks, but actually gets stronger from them. So, my final question to you is this. Will you continue to see the obstacles in your life as burdens to be lamented? Or will you have the courage to see them as blessings to be utilized as the very path to the person you wish to become? The choice, like every choice in this morning ritual, is entirely yours. Begin tomorrow. How Stoics remove toxic people without drama. Redefine the enemy. The myth of the toxic person. What if I told you that the concept of a toxic person is a modern invention that is making you weak, reactive, and miserable? What if the very label you use to find relief is actually a chain, binding you to a cycle of anger and frustration? We live in a culture that encourages us to diagnose, label, and excommunicate anyone who causes us discomfort. We call them narcissists, energy vampires, toxic personalities. It feels empowering, like we've identified the source of our problem. But this is a strategic error of the highest magnitude. The moment you label someone as toxic, you have surrendered your power. You have defined them as a malevolent force with the inherent ability to harm your inner state. You have cast yourself as the victim, and in doing so, you have made your peace of mind entirely dependent on their absence or their change, two things over which you have absolutely no control. The Stoics offered a more radical and ultimately more powerful diagnosis. They taught that no person can harm your inner self, your character, your reason, your soul, unless you allow them to. Any harm you feel comes not from their actions, but from your judgment about their actions. Seneca put it plainly, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." The problem is not the person, the problem is the story you tell yourself about the person. I saw this play out countless times in the hyper-competitive world of technology. I had a business rival, a man named Julian. He was aggressive, underhanded, and seemed to take a personal delight in poaching my clients and spreading rumors. In my mind, he was the definition of a toxic person. I spent years consumed by my hatred for him. My mood would sour at the mere mention of his name. I wasted countless hours of mental energy replaying his offenses and plotting my revenge. He lived rent-free in my head, a tyrant in my own mind. I had given him complete power over my emotional state. It was only after my burnout, when I began studying the Stoics, that I understood the depth of my mistake. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who dealt with betrayal, incompetence, and endless political scheming, wrote to himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil." He wasn't making an excuse for them. He was diagnosing their condition, ignorance. He saw their malice not as a personal attack, but as a symptom of their own inner poverty. They didn't know any better. This reframed everything for me. Julian wasn't a monster sent to destroy me. He was a man enslaved by his own ambition and insecurity, acting from a place of profound ignorance about what constitutes a good life. He wasn't toxic, he was misguided. This shift didn't excuse his behavior, but it did liberate me from my hatred. It took the personal sting out of it and turned it into an objective problem to be managed, not a personal war to be won. The first step in dealing with a difficult person, then, is not to remove them, but to remove the label. You must stop seeing them as a villain in your story and start seeing them as a flawed human being acting from their own set of principles. This is the foundation upon which all other Stoic strategies are built. So I ask you, who is that toxic person in your life? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you stripped them of that label and saw their actions not as malice, but as a misguided attempt to find their own happiness or security? The Inner Citadel, fortifying your mind before building fences. Before you can even think about managing the difficult people in your life, you must first ask yourself a hard question. Is my own house in order? We are often so focused on the external annoyance, the critical boss, the manipulative family member, the unreliable friend, that we fail to see the chaos within our own minds. We want to build fences to keep them out, but we don't realize our own gates have been left wide open. A boundary set by a person who is internally fragile is nothing more than a line drawn in the sand, easily washed away by the first wave of provocation. If your mind is a battlefield of reactive emotions, hair-trigger anger, and fragile self-worth, then any difficult person will seem like an invading army. The true Stoic path is to first build an inner citadel, a fortress of reason, resilience, and self-command so strong that no external force can breach its walls. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I had a board member who was relentlessly critical of my every move. Every meeting was an interrogation. He questioned my strategy, my team, my vision. I took it all personally. After each encounter, I would be consumed with rage and self-doubt. I'd complain to my wife, vent to my partners, and lose sleep rehearsing arguments in my head. I tried to set boundaries. I'd tell him, "Your criticism is demoralizing," or I'd try to avoid him. But it was useless. Because I was so desperate for his approval, my internal state was completely at his mercy. My boundary was just a desperate plea for him to be nicer to me. It had no force because there was no fortress behind it. My peace was a hostage he controlled.